Welcome to the From Poverty to Prosperity podcast, where leaders and aspiring leaders come to be equipped with the mindset, tools, and strategies to lead with influence, impact, and legacy. I'm your host, Dr. Tekemia Dorsey. And if there's one thing that I know for certain, it's this. Leadership, when done well, transforms lives, families, communities, and organizations. But leadership done poorly or leadership undeveloped creates poverty in itself. Poverty of vision, poverty of integrity, poverty of legacy. But this podcast is designed to change all of that. Let me take you back for a moment. I didn't begin my journey with everything handed to me. Like many of you, I faced challenges that could have limited my vision, but I discovered something. Poverty isn't about only money. Growing up in poverty on the west side of Baltimore, in hindsight, I didn't even know I was living in poverty because I was simply surrounded by love. Love of 11 aunts and uncles, a dedicated grandmother, neighbors that were like family members to me. And that was in a true sense of it takes a village to raise a child. And so it wasn't until college that I realized that I was broke as a joke because the love within the home and the homes and the family and the people that I was surrounded by wasn't impoverished. It was unifying. It was gratifying. It was just self-fulfilling, and poverty isn't just about money. Poverty shows up in leadership when vision is small, when discipline is missing, when integrity is compromised, and when leaders only think about themselves and not those that they serve. Do you know anyone or a couple of people or community of people that falls within that category? I know I do. I've seen leaders who are wealthy in money, but poor in character. I've seen leaders with big titles and no influence. And I've seen leaders who lack resources, but possess prosperity of vision and were able to transform everything around them. So like you, I've seen the good and the bad and the in-between. This podcast is born from that realization. And from my book, From Poverty to Prosperity, it's about getting leaders like you a roadmap to step into prosperity-driven leadership. Yes, I am excited to repeat that again. It's about giving leaders like you a roadmap to step into prosperity-driven leadership. Because when leaders prosper in vision, when leaders prosper in purpose, and when leaders prosper in impact, the people they lead prosper as well. So you're probably wondering, so why this podcast? Why now? Right? Because leadership today requires more than just authority. It requires clarity, courage, and a commitment to building prosperity that outlasts you. This podcast, From Poverty to Prosperity, has three purposes. The first is to equip leaders and aspiring leaders with strategies to grow themselves and elevate others. So you're probably thinking, what define aspiring leaders? It's everyone and anyone from youth to young adult, college age students, college graduates, and anyone who is not in a position of influence that they desire to reach. And leaders are those that are in the position of influence right now. The second purpose of this podcast is to redefine prosperity so that leaders don't just chase income or titles, but pursue influence, legacy, and transformation. And the third purpose of this podcast is to create a community of leaders who are committed to lifting others as they rise. Every episode will be practical, actionable, and deeply tied to leadership growth. You'll walk away with not just being inspired, but equipped to lead differently. Now, as I was writing my book, From Poverty to Prosperity, there is a segment in there that really talks about leadership poverty versus leadership prosperity. And when we're thinking about leadership poverty, oftentimes the word leadership and poverty are not intertwined. But in actuality, it is in a more simplistic manner. Leadership poverty looks more like a lack of vision. Oftentimes, leaders who can't see beyond the immediate lack vision. And guess what? Is that a bad thing? No. Why, you're wondering? Because at some point in our leadership journey, everyone, all of us, had a lack of vision. And we couldn't see beyond our immediate need. Like we were in this hamster wheel that we didn't know how to come out of. But at one point or another, we had to be honest with ourselves to be able to come out of that hamster wheel circle. Leadership poverty also looks like a lack of discipline. Leaders who don't model consistency, guilty as charged. That was me at one point, especially as a mom, where everything else became the back burner. I was no longer being able to be in this club and that organization. My sports were on the back burner. So my commitment to those organizations was not as strong as my commitment to my family. Therefore, I lacked consistency in my outcome, in my outreach. So I lacked discipline. And I was okay with that because I had more discipline as a mom than a leader within my community by choice. Another example of leadership poverty is a lack of humility. And this is when leaders who place their ego above service. Let's think about that. Is there anyone you know who put their ego above service? Yes, I know quite a few. I can't honestly say that I've been one of them because my love language is service. But I have been around those individuals who put their egos first and service second. And it was a reminder to me to stay grounded and to do the right thing according to my ethics and morals. And last but not least, leadership poverty is the lack of legacy. In other words, it's more like transactional leadership. And a lack of legacy under leadership poverty are leaders who are consumed with themselves instead of lifting others. It happens. Transactions happen daily. But when you lead with prosperity, you move from transactional leadership into transformational leadership. So let's dive into a few characteristics and criteria of leadership prosperity. Leadership prosperity is when a leader has a vision that inspires and guides others. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, Barack Obama, my grandmother, your mother, a guardian, a role model in the community. Leadership prosperity is discipline that builds trust and credibility. Discipline, trust, and credibility are three key words in that sentence. Leadership prosperity is when integrity that sustains influence over time. Not a one and done, not a two-hit wonder, but consistency over time. Where every time a person thinks of that person, they think of integrity and how they handle themselves in almost all scenarios. And last but not least, leadership prosperity is a commitment to legacy, investing in others so that your leadership multiplies. And this is highly important because in transformational leadership, it is never about the individual and always about others. Now, let's think about how this podcast will challenge you. This podcast will challenge you to examine yourself honestly. And that's very hard for us in today's time. People don't like to look at their mirrored image. They don't like to look at the negative things. People don't like to look at their flaws, things that make them less than desirable or less than people want to be around them. But guess what? If we don't look at ourselves, others will. 9 times out of 10, when we are projecting our negativity onto others or things aren't going right, well, I should say 10 out of 10 instead of 9 out of 10, it's not because of something someone else did towards us. It's really about what we haven't done for ourselves. Every opportunity when we wake up each morning is a different day to do something positive or move the needle forward. But it's our lack of mindset, our lack of movement, quote unquote behavior, and our lack of action that prevents us from being successful. Again, completely up to us. And when you are experiencing leadership poverty, where are you most likely in life? Are you at home? Are you at work? Is it in your community? Is it in a relationship? Is it within you? And how do you commit to stepping into prosperity-driven leadership when you're stuck in a leadership poverty state of mind? Ooh, that was deep. But let me give you a recap, or let me give you an overview of what we're going to cover here in season 1 of From Poverty to Prosperity. In this season, we're going to lay the foundation of prosperity leadership, because poverty isn't something that just started yesterday. It isn't something that just popped up this morning, and it's not going to go away tomorrow. In today's climate with Project 2025 and the big, beautiful bill that's not so beautiful, people have to take back their ownership, starting with their mirrored image, so that they can transform themselves, their communities, their lives, their families, and everyone around them, regardless of the politics. So in this first season, we're going to lay the foundation of prosperity. And here is what you can anticipate in the next few episodes. In our next episode, we're going to tackle the poverty of leadership. And you may be surprised of what that really means. Then we're going to dive into mindset mastery, while leading yourself comes before leading others. What? Say that again? Why leading yourself comes before leading anyone else. And moms are guilty of this. We can take care of any and everybody else except ourselves. And then we're figuring out why we're overweight, unhappy, eating as a result of being stressed, fallen into mental health crisis because we're quick to take care of others instead of taking care of ourselves. It happens. We're going to explore education as leadership power. And while great leaders never stop learning, that is so true. And then we'll break down barriers leaders must break. And these are the obstacles that hold leaders back from leading at their full capacity. We're still at every turn trying to figure out how we can be better present as a leader in leadership roles and positions of influence. By the end of season 1, you'll have a clear framework to evaluate your leadership, sharpen your mindset, and start leading with prosperity. Now, I want to speak to you directly. So if you're driving, pull over. If you are doing something else, I want you to pause it for a moment, and I want you to actively listen, because this is critically important. If you're already leading, this podcast will sharpen you. If you are aspiring to lead, this podcast will prepare you. Let me say it again. If you're already leading, this podcast is going to sharpen you. You ever heard the metaphor, iron sharpens iron? Absolutely. But if you are aspiring to lead, this podcast is going to prepare you to lead effectively. If you're building a business, leading in your workplace, serving in your community, or preparing to influence future generations, this podcast will guide you. Because leadership is not just about a title. Leadership is about transformation. And prosperity in leadership is about leaving something behind that outlives you. Oh, I love dropping nuggets. So I got to say that again. Leadership is about transformation, not transaction. And prosperity in leadership is about leaving something behind that outlives you. So dynamic. Now, here's what I need you to do. First of all, I want to thank you for joining this episode 1 from Poverty to Prosperity podcast, because it's phenomenal. I am super excited in so many ways. I'm kind of overwhelmed with trying to make sure I get everything out in a very strategic manner, because this has been on my heart for so long. If you've been following me for a while, you've known poverty and education and all of that has always been as a part of the foundation. But here's what I need you to do. I need you first to subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss an episode. Yep, click the button right there. Right? Not hard. All you got to do is subscribe. Then I want you to share this episode with another leader or aspiring leader who needs it. Now, remember when I defined earlier what a aspiring leader is? It is a youth today, a young adult, a college graduate, a college student, someone in the workforce, your boss, your team. It doesn't matter. They are leaders or aspiring leaders. And guess what? We need them to be a part of this. We need them to listen and identify a little more what's happening. And I want you to leave a review so that we can spread this moment to leaders worldwide. Whew, man, we did it. Remember this. True prosperity for leaders isn't found in wealth, titles, or recognition. Let's build leaders who prosper, and bring prosperity to others. I'm so excited. My name is Dr. Tekemia Dorsey. I am the host of From Poverty to Prosperity podcast, based off my book, From Poverty to Prosperity. And I look forward to you joining me in the next episode. And until then, have a great day. Lead with confidence and hug yourself every morning, because every day above ground means that your work isn't done. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon.